the way marketing actually functions is you invest dollars to buy eyeballs, to buy people's attention. You need to go back to the future and borrow from the past and bring things forward and build out a measurement solution that utilizes impressions as its centralized metric. You have this go attitude 24/7 and you're pushing really hard. You can sometimes easily lose focus on what matters.
What one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Most important is to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're no good to anyone.
Hello and welcome to the Business Growth Show, where we talk about all components of business and how to utilize them for exponential growth. My name is Ethan Cassiotis. I'm a business growth expert who help business owners grow and scale to create wealth and freedom.
Today, I have an awesome guest. His name is Jeff Greenfield. He's an entrepreneur, advisor, and disruptor with 3 decades of strategy, growth, and marketing leadership. Jeff is currently building the next generation of AI-Driven Attribution as the co-founder and CEO of Provalytics, which is a cookieless attribution and measurement solution which enables marketers to prove the impact from upper funnel channels like CTV and grow their budgets. Welcome, Jeff Greenfield, and thank you for being on the Business Growth Show.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I'm sure it's going to be great for everyone watching and listening today. And you are a successful entrepreneur. So for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself by telling us a bit more about you and your journey.
Yeah, well, I'm Jeff Greenfield. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Provalytics, an AI-driven attribution platform. We measure the effectiveness of media. Essentially, we help solve the old age problem of, half the money I spend in marketing is wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half. That's something that has hurt marketers for years. And it's a lot of math. It's a lot of numbers. It's on the surface, it's not very sexy, but what's cool about it is we're kind of in the middle of things, but I didn't get started with this. This is actually my second business in this arena. I started another company in 2008 that grew to be one of the leading attribution platforms for larger enterprise clients for folks like JP Morgan and US Bank, and exited that company in 2019 and kind of got pulled back into things when I saw all these privacy changes that were happening across the entire digital landscape, and saw an opportunity to say, hey, this problem is now coming back again and needs to be solved in a privacy manner. And it was a great opportunity, but I didn't get started with all of that. My journey is somewhat non-linear. I actually went to school to become a chiropractor. That's what my dream was, to do that. And I started building a practice and had a nice successful practice. And then I had a car accident that damaged a nerve in my arm and couldn't take care of patients anymore. And so I didn't know what to do. And so I got out of that business and I went on the road to do something I'd done as a child, which was to do magic. During college, I kind of paid my way through college as a professional magician. And this was right around the time of the internet. It just started. So I knew I needed a website. And to make a long story short, I ended up having to build my own. And that led to me being able to build up a consulting practice. I ended up building one of the first SaaS SEO platforms for folks to get to the top of the search engines, and eventually led me along an interesting journey that got me to this point where now I'm in the middle of everything, which is what's cool about this business of measurement, because I get to see what some of the biggest brands in the world are spending and what their hopes or dreams are in terms of what it's going to achieve. And then I get to be the one that comes in and says, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, but that radio spot just really sucks. And it hurts a lot of feelings. I'm not always the most popular person in the world, but I don't have, any dog in the race or a horse in the race here. I just call them as the machine and the statistics see them. But it's quite an interesting spot to be in the middle of things.
Yeah, cool. What an awesome journey. I love that. Yeah, having to pivot, with an injury, unfortunately, but, took you down a cool route, obviously with the magic background as well. And then, yeah, websites, getting to marketing. And it's funny how the journey takes us, into certain things in life. And great timing with the exit, by the way, as well, 2019 there, which, got a bit of fortune there, which is great. And then changes. And I like the way that you saw the change in the market and you're like, well, things have to change now. And, going back in to solve that problem. So, yeah, very, very cool. Love the story, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that. So I know one of the things you talk about is the cookie apocalypse. Just maybe start with saying, maybe explain to people what cookies are. I know, but from your perspective, just in case they don't know, we're not getting hungry here. Also, I guess what's going to change around that as well.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know that the internet, the reason it's primarily free is because it's advertising supported. Every page you go to, there's ads that are there. And, I know a lot of us complain about them, but things used to be really, really bad in the early days of the internet. Things have gotten a lot better. And the reason they've gotten better is the technology behind them. And one aspect of that are cookies. And there's two types of cookies. There's these first party cookies. These are cookies that are set on the site that you go to. So like Amazon drops a cookie on your machine. And what that allows you to do is that when you go to Amazon.com and even though you're automatically logged in, it's like magic. And the reason they're able to do that is that like in real time, as the page is loading, it's looking on your machine or your phone to say, hey, do you have my cookie? And then they look and they see, and there's like encrypted data, and they're like, oh, I know who you are. Let's log you in. And that's how you're able to log in. So those are first party cookies. The other cookies are these tracking cookies, these third party cookies. And that's like when you go to like a newspaper website like the New York Times and you go there and there's an ad there. Cookies are going to be dropped by an ad server. Like let's say DoubleClick is a big ad server that's owned by Google. And the reason they drop these cookies is because let's say I'm selling the new Volvo. And what I know is you're right in my demographic and I want to show you this ad. But if you see it 80 times a day, you will then hate me, especially if you see it 80 times a day for the next month. So what I do is I drop a cookie to count how many times you've seen it. So once you've seen it 3 or 4 times, you're not going to see it for the rest of that day. You'll probably see it 3 or 4 more times the next day. So cookies allow advertisers to track the frequency, how often they show people ads. It also allows us to measure the effectiveness of ads. But at least we used to be able to do things that way because we used to be able to have third-party cookies on sites like Facebook, on sites like YouTube, and on sites like Amazon. But what happened is there was a series of cosmic changes, if you will. It started with in the EU, the GDPR that essentially said, hey, you never ask people for permission to opt in. So now there's no more list. There's no more email list. You have to start fresh and you have to ask people, hey, do you want to be part of this list? Very similar to like what happened with that iOS update where they ask you, do you want to allow this app? And what do most people do? They say no, is what happens. And that iOS update was after what happened with GDPR. And then these third-party cookies have not worked in iOS for a long time. They haven't worked in Firefox. They're gone from most browsers, and they were going to be gone from Chrome. And Chrome is the major browser that most people use to make their way across the web. So there was a big shakeup in the advertising industry about what was going to happen. So a bunch of new cookie-less technologies were developed. And throughout that whole process, people started to look back at cookies and said, these really aren't as reliable as we thought they were. And then at the last minute, Google said, yeah, we're not going to do it. That's what they said. We're still going to keep the cookies. They're still going to be here because they're not really as reliable as they once were anyway. And most advertisers aren't using them for as much as they thought they were going to be because the damage has already been done because of all of the changes in iOS and across the rest of the ecosystem. But what it's done, has changed how advertisers need to approach their advertising. To give you an example, a study just came out about 2 months ago that showed just from that iOS privacy update, which is part of this cookie apocalypse, advertisers who were targeting based upon those types of criteria saw a 37% decrease in revenue if they were unable to adapt and make changes to their advertising strategy. So what this translates to is for a lot of consumers, you're not going to see much of a difference. You may see ads more frequently than you should. But for advertisers, there's a lot of bobbing and weaving that needs to go on so they don't see their revenues start to shrink and their ROI start to go down from their advertising.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's a very good background of where it's gone. And then now, like you're saying, there's different technologies and things. And is this like, obviously Meta or Facebook has like the pixel, right? That they have on there. Is that an example of what they've done for, I guess, a cookie or a cookie-less type of technology, I guess?
Yeah, they've got that server to server type connection, but they're still somewhat handcuffed because of the mobile environment. So the only way that Meta can really get complete information is advertisers really have to kind of sync up their database and their CRM with Meta because Meta knows pretty much everyone who's ever going to buy from you. And so if you push your database and CRM to them, which they encrypt, and then they mash it up with their own database, which they know, which they won't give you, then they can have a pretty good idea of who's converting and who's not converting. But that's a lot of work for a lot of brands to go through. And most of them still have not done that, which means what happens to Meta is Meta a lot of times, let's say you had 100 sales of something in one day, and Meta says, and everyone claims that Meta takes too much credit, but let's say Meta says, we got you 25 of those sales. Well, the reality is they actually probably got you 35, but they don't even know themselves. So what we have seen in our data across our clients is that Meta is significantly underreporting due to these changes that have happened through this whole cookie apocalypse.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we definitely don't want to be missing things where possible or getting incorrect reporting in our marketing because yeah, that's how we make decisions. So let's talk a bit more around Facebook being the big, obviously, advertising engine. Google Ads is obviously a big one as well. I know you talk about analyzing, I guess, the performance, more effectively too. So do you want to share a little bit more for us of getting that out the way we want it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of focus since the beginning of digital on that clicks are it. Clicks are what you want. And it's easy as a marketer to really think that because it's like, people can't buy my stuff until they click. And so the way most marketers look at things is they look at their cost per click every day. And then they say, okay, I just need to buy more clicks. And so what we have now is a generation of marketers who believe that you invest dollars to buy clicks and clicks lead to sales. And that is missing a huge component of marketing. Because really, the way marketing actually functions is you invest dollars to buy eyeballs, to buy people's attention. And in marketing, we call that impressions. You're buying impressions. And what those impressions do is they build awareness for your business or service. And when awareness is built to a certain level, people will then, to borrow from the past, they will walk into your store and they come to your store and then they buy. So you could say in today's world, walking into your store is the equivalent of clicking on your website. And so one of the problems that we see today in terms of evaluating things is that folks are only looking at clicks. But here's a real life scenario is that you start running campaigns on Meta. So we're talking Instagram and Facebook. People are seeing your ads, they're getting exposed, they're scrolling through them. Because, when people are in Meta, they're kind of in the zone. They're not in a buying mode. They're just kind of scrolling along, looking at things. The ads are kind of there, but it builds awareness. They see like 3 or 4 of your ads. And then several hours later, they're like, oh, yeah, what was that thing? Oh, yeah, that cool new briefcase. Let me go check that out. Where is that at? And then what do? They go to Google, they type it in, and they click on the first thing they see, which is the ad. And then they end up buying. The marketer gets a sale, which is great. But the way the marketer evaluates it is they say, what was the source of this sale? It was Google. And then it looks at the ads in Meta and it says, yeah, Meta's just, I don't get it. Meta's just not performing for me. I'm going to cut my spend there. But Meta is what built the awareness that drove that click. And the problem is that that awareness building, that impression doesn't appear anywhere in GA4 or Google Analytics. It's not there. So to a marketer, you can't even see it. In fact, when I talk to most marketers, when they download their reports from Meta and they look at the columns that they download, they typically just get date, clicks, and how much they spent. They ignore the impressions column. And that's actually what you're buying is you're buying those eyeballs. So the best way to look at this stuff is that you need to think about what is marketing actually doing? Marketing is actually building that awareness. And the click is what comes as the after effect from it. And that's why we see for most of our clients when they first come to us, they are way over invested in click-based media. I mean, here's a great example is podcast. We're on a podcast right now. Podcast advertising was one of the fastest growing advertising mediums. And yet, what is there for someone to click on? There's nothing to click on. You hear an ad, you remember it, and you either go directly to it or you Google it, or you go to Amazon and you search for a product. But there's nothing to click on. That's why a lot of businesses who start advertising a podcast, they're like, yeah, didn't work for me. And the reality is that it's not that it didn't work, it's just that their measurement wasn't taking into account that first step, which is that awareness building.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing there with how to, look at that ecosystem from an impression. You're right, because especially now these days, you would know this as a marketer, is that it's taking a lot more touch points, a lot more times for someone to trust us or the brand to be able to buy, right? So that's where those impressions or how many times they see it determines that. So so important. And that's why having that, I guess, marketing ecosystem, right, of different platforms is important, so that you do get the sale one way or another, depending on where they're at there. So awesome, love that. So you mentioned there about podcasts. So let's talk a bit more about this. I love podcasting, of course, and we're doing it now. It's obviously growing, much more lately, where people are liking to listen to a lot more. And so, like you said, it's a non-click digital channel. There's also, CTV, right? Is another element of this. So, how is this being measured, I guess, now? Because maybe it's a two-pronged question with both. Let me know. But I know there's potential listeners, right, on there on how that looks for a podcast. But I'd love to know from your perspective of how can we measure that in these other non-click digital channels.
Well, it's kind of like what we talked about in the green room before we got on here. We have to go back to the future is what we have to do. We have to think about what did we do? What did brands do before there was this digital ecosystem? So if we think back before digital, there was television, radio, print, direct mail, coupons. That was pretty much it. And there's a lot of big brands that were somehow able to grow, brands like BMW, Pepsi, and Coke. And what they would do is that they would run these campaigns and think about all of those things. There's nothing to click on there. And they would run a campaign and then they would step back and wait to see what the results were. And what they used was a mathematical technique called marketing mix modeling. And what that did is that it looked at the relationship of how many impressions, how many eyeballs they were reaching every week. And they look at that relationship to what the sales were. And they were looking at the causality, the contribution. How much did each impression from each type of media actually contribute to sales? And it's a statistically sound technique. And from this, they were able to determine, how much, if you want to grow your business by 10%, how much you need to spend in each channel. Now, that worked back then, but there were a couple of problems with it. One was you had to get 3 years worth of data. So it turned what, for us, when we think about measurement, all of us think about GA4, like you add some tags and it just works. That's pretty simple. Sometimes it's a little harder to get set up and running, but once it's running, it's there. That's what to most people measurement is. But this is 3 years worth of weekly data of like everything. So it wasn't really measurement. It was more of like this massive project that had to be done. That was number one. Number two, it took months to be completed. And the output from it was like a several hundred page PowerPoint presentation. So not very, dare I say, actionable at all. And the output was at the channel level. So it would tell you spend more on direct mail, spend less in radio. And that was pretty much it. It would help you set budget allocations. For digital marketers, it's kind of useless. And so what's happened is that's why the growth of attribution came around in the mid, 2008, 2009, because digital marketers said, hey, telling me to spend more on search doesn't help me. I need to know campaign ad group keyword match type. I need to know levels of granularity. For Facebook, I need to know ad set creative. That audience, that's what I need to understand and know. So attribution did all of that, but it wasn't as statistically sound as marketing mix modeling was. And so here we are in today's world where we have these no-click digital channels. And the problem is that everyone is measuring just with clicks. So we need to go back to the future and borrow from the past and bring things forward and build out a measurement solution that utilizes impressions as its centralized metric. You need a way to look at things, not apples to oranges. You can't say this is impressions, this is clicks. Everything needs to be under that same lens of impressions. So what we've done at Provalytics is that we took the marketing mix modeling of the past and we merged it with the multi-touch attribution, the stuff that digital marketers really liked. And so we're using statistically sound techniques. We're using privacy-centric data. It's not user-level data. And the output is at a level that marketers need in order to make decisions. So instead of saying, spend 5% more on search, it's actual campaign creative combinations. That's how you're able to measure things like CTV, podcast advertising, digital out of home, and who knows what they're going to create next week. There'll probably be something on ChatGPT pretty soon, or Perplexity and some of these others that is completely outside the realm of browsers. That's going to be a whole new form of advertising. So I always say, just wait. There's going to be something new, but the key is you have to have a centralized metric to do it under. And impressions is the thing that works across everything. And that's what's wonderful about it.
Yeah, I love that. So important to get that. And yeah, sounds very cool with all of that. And I don't know, my bet would be in the metaverse at some point when they get it right, when we got these little goggle things on or whatever, and then we're just going to be getting ads and stuff like that probably. But we're probably a little way away from that just yet. So we'll get ready for that one as it comes through. You mentioned about GA4, Google Analytics 4, right? And I know there's some pros and cons, let's call it, of it. So do you want to just share a little bit more for the people that, it's important, obviously, to know what's happening on your website, but how we can, I guess, utilize it or what shortcomings there are?
Yeah, I think it's important whenever you're using any type of measurement. And I should state at the beginning that, all measurement's wrong. I mean, let's be honest, even at Provalytics, I can't get inside people's heads to figure out exactly why they purchased. It's statistics, it's probabilistic modeling. And we say that all models are wrong, some are useful. That's the statement in the modeling world. And what I'll say is that Google Analytics 4, if you're just buying click-based media, it probably will work pretty good for you. You'll run eventually into some issues. But the thing to understand about GA4 is that it's definitely wrong, because all this stuff is wrong. But what I'll say is utilizing an impression-based measurement system is definitely a lot less wrong than GA4. So if you start to think about what's in GA4 and what's not in GA4, back to the example we gave of Facebook, you run a bunch of ads on Facebook, and the value of Facebook is from the awareness building that's happening. But you're not going to see that in GA4. All you will see is the clicks coming through. And it's important to remember that GA4 stands for Google Analytics 4, and it really should be Google's Analytics, because that's what it is, because it automatically hooks up to Google. when you buy ads, it's automated, it's all set there. But if you start to think about if I'm a young brand and I have a Shopify store and I'm selling, let's say I'm selling soap that I make at home on my Shopify store, GA4 seems to be the kind of the go-to thing as I'm buying ads on Meta and I'm buying ads on Google. But let's say all of a sudden things start to take off and I see an opportunity to start selling on Amazon. So I start putting my stuff on Amazon. Well, GA4 doesn't work on Amazon. It's its whole different universe. So now these numbers that I've based my entire business on don't work there. And let's say you're in the States and all of a sudden I'm selling on Walmart, Target, CVS, RiteAid.com. Does GA4 go on those? No, it doesn't. And so what happens is that GA4 is now only measuring one small piece of your business. So it's limited in the sense that it's really good at measuring Google's ads, but no one else's. And that's really the limitation behind it. So if you're using it to analyze Facebook, you're missing the whole advantage of Facebook.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Love that correlation there. So let's talk a bit more about Provalytics, right? Because you're doing this area, you've got the central metric. You talked about obviously measuring by impressions, having that, what that one metric. Now I'd like to know from a connection, because a lot of people obviously would have like CRMs and other systems, right? In their business already. So, how does it work with other software systems like CRMs so that you're getting a great marketing ecosystem there, let's call it, to be able to measure and make better decisions in the business?
Yeah, so a marketing CRM typically has a listing of all of your current customers or people that have opted in. One of the limitations of a CRM is it has one little section for you to fill in called source, like how did we get this customer? And the problem is that what happens if that customer found out about you from originally from a Meta ad, and then they saw an influencer on TikTok, and then they clicked on a Google ad, and then maybe they went and watched a webinar. How would you account for that person in a CRM? That's the big issue with the CRM, is that it is one place for source. And that has led a lot of companies astray, thinking that there's one single source that is the cause of a customer. That tends to be that last action or the last click. It's typically for companies with CRMs, it's the last thing that they clicked before they came through. And that typically is very wrong, meaning that if you were to use that data and then say, okay, this is where I got 80% of my customers from, I'm going to spend more money there and get more customers. Because in most instances, what the CRM says is that these people came through your brand search term, or they just showed up, meaning they came in direct or organic. And the problem is you can't spend more in direct. It just happens. It's from people who know about you, and you can't spend more on brand search because that's also driven by demand. So you need to know, how did they find out about you? And that's what really should be in there. And the problem is today, and you even said it, is that it's taking more touch points. People find out from you through a myriad of different things, and you need to have like a long form for it. And the other issue is that because of privacy laws, you're actually not really going to know for every individual user how they found out about you. But I'll tell you how we use CRM data and how we incorporate CRM data at Provalytics. So for us, the biggest issue that our customers come to us with, and our customers are larger marketers that are spending in the tens of millions of dollars or more each year. And the big issue that they have is they want to do things like no-click digital channels, and they've tested them, but they can't prove it works. So they can't get budget for it to really go all in. And the person they need to go and get budget for it from is the finance person, the CFO. And CFO is very regimented about the numbers. Remember, the chief financial officer has to keep payroll going and keep the company going, and everything has to add up. And marketers, we tend to be loosey-goosey with the numbers. But the problem for marketers is that, if I'm a CMO, I'm looking at GA4. I've got 5 or 6 agencies. They have their own measurement things. And the problem is that there's like 10 or 15 different sources of truth. And the CFO was also looking at GA4 because it's part of the company's dashboarding system. And I can't go to a CFO and ask for money for something that doesn't show up in GA4. So I need a single source of truth that accurately measures everything that I'm doing. And then I need to get everybody on my team involved with it. I need to get my agencies all on board. And then I can present it to my CFO because I need to get it to live inside our organization. That's really the big kind of problem that marketers are facing. And the CRM, the way we incorporate the CRM is that in these larger marketers, the CRM typically is people that have expressed an interest and they're on like a nurturing type campaign. So if you're a big e-commerce player, you have a huge Klaviyo database of people who have come to your website. They put in an email address, they put in their phone number, and you're hitting them over the head with emails and SMS messages. And then there's another segment of people that have purchased who haven't come back in 90 days, and you're hitting them over the head. And guess what? These are all, every time you send out a text message, every time you send out an email, those are ad impressions. You don't have to pay for them because you already have these people in your database, but we're able to incorporate those into the Provalytics model so you actually can see the impact that your CRM activities, your nurturing is having on your overall sales and your return on ad spend and your return on ad investment. So that's how we kind of incorporate that CRM in there. But for us, the marketers that come to us, they come to us because there's that disconnect within their organization between marketing and finance.
Yeah, cool, interesting. And I love that area of putting it all in. I think having a central source of data is very important for anything, right? And especially in the marketing side, like what you're doing there. You mentioned around the finance side. So would it be that if not all of the data is in the CRM, for example, they have an accounting system or something like that where it goes somewhere else, would that be able to be brought in? I guess it depends on what they're willing to share and everything to put it into one system so that you could see it fully as well.
Yeah, and to borrow from like Google Analytics 4, for example, which is part of Google, you can take GA4 data and automatically, if you will, export it into a dashboarding system, which Google now owns called Looker, which is a data visualization system. So most organizations now today have some sort of internal dashboards that everyone in the organization has at least some access to. The C-level obviously can see more things, and they have executive level reports that they see. And there's all sorts of types of dashboards, everything from Tableau to Datorama. And like I said, Looker is one of them. The key is for any type of analytics platform is to be able to push data in to any type of data visualization software. For us at Provalytics, when we built this out originally, we knew that the only way for our customers to be successful is that the data had to live inside their organization because eventually to have a conversation with the CFO, what has to happen is this stuff just has to show up on the dashboard. It just has to be there because you can't send a note to a CFO and say, hey, for our meeting today, we're going to go with here. Here's the username and password. They're just not going to do it. It's not native to their organization. So we're able to export and push all of our data directly into any of those platforms. That's how we built it from the beginning, is to be able to push in there because you have to live internally. Otherwise, you're not part of the business. And these numbers have to be part of the business. Otherwise, they're not going to be trusted.
Yeah, love that. Very awesome. And getting all that together makes amazing decisions to mirror those two and grow the business. So let's talk about AI now, right? I know there's some AI enhancements and things in here, and I'd love to know your thoughts generally, right, about AI. So where is that encompassing? Because it's obviously disrupting a lot of things these days in business.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we use AI in our process. We use it a lot differently than how most people think of AI. Most people think of AI as ChatGPT, as a chatbot type thing. What we did is that we trained a bot to oversee our four-part process. prior to this, when we were building out the platform, there was a series of 4 steps that the numbers had to go through. And at each step, a human had to intervene and look to see, to decide, is it ready to go on to the next step? It's kind of like, checking the souffle along the way. You don't want to upset it, but you do have to kind of check it and watch it. So we trained an AI bot that doesn't go exterior, it lives internal to our platform to handle that communication so that the process runs seamless without human intervention. So we're able to train it on essentially all the possibilities that could happen. But I think AI itself, especially where it is just absolutely positively incredible. I use it every day. In fact, I'm using ChatGPT more often than I'm using Google these days, especially for things. I do a lot of work in Excel, and I was never trained in Excel. So I used to spend a lot of time in Google Googling different answers of how to solve like these different errors that would come up when you're working with large data sets. And I'm sure someone that has an MBA could easily figure it out, but I couldn't figure it out. So what would happen is I would Google and then search through the results and click on one, and then I have to read a whole article. Whereas now I put the question into ChatGPT and it gives me right away, immediately, a whole series of solutions. I don't have to read anything. It's right there. And if I give it more information, particularly about the sheet I'm working on, it'll actually give me the ID numbers and the cell IDs, and I can cut and paste it in. So it's pretty remarkable. I have had a couple of hiccups with it. One time we received this large file that should have been a single file, but instead of a single file, received 365 files, so one for each day. And so I thought, okay, this is not a problem. We'll merge them all. So I got a formula from ChatGPT and it merged them all. And then I realized that each file was missing the date field, which would enable us to sort it. The date field was actually the name of each file. So I was like, okay. So I asked ChatGPT how to do it. It told me how to do it. I trusted it. It looked like it was running, and I got up and I made myself a sandwich. And I came back 20 minutes later and it said my machine was shutting down because it was almost out of space. It had almost eaten through half a terabyte that quickly. And what it did is it created an out of control process, which can happen when you're coding in like terminal. So I quickly stopped it, deleted all of that stuff, and then realized that, ChatGPT is great at giving you an answer and being very pleasant, but you really need to, trust but verify type of thing, and definitely start with a smaller data set. So I'm always cautious with it, but it is incredibly helpful. And now, because of this new thing where you can automate processes, it's about to change how all of us traverse the web. Here in the US, one of the things that's happened in terms of changes of behavior is about 8 years ago, Amazon took every single product that they had and they advertised on Google. They were the number one advertiser on Google for many years. And so what happened is I would search for a product in Google like I always did, and then I'd see Amazon. I click on Amazon. I'm like, wow, here it is. It doesn't take long, maybe 10 times of doing that. And then you realize, hey, I can save a click in order to go there. And so that's what's happening with me right now with my Excel issues, is that I'm saving a bunch of clicks. And now they just produced a video that shows, in order for me to like buy a ticket for a tour in Rome, I would normally go and read a bunch of reviews, and then I would click and go through an affiliate link to buy a tour. Now I just go to ChatGPT, tell them I want to book a tour of Rome on this particular day. I want it to be the top rated tour. And it can just go automatically and do all of that, bypassing the browser altogether. So talk about all of the clicks, because I know, because I just went to Rome over the holidays and I probably spent 4 hours researching all of the different tours before I bought a ticket. So think about all the clicks I went through and how that's going to save a lot of things. So the open web, in terms of what we think about it and what we know about it, because remember, it's all advertising supported. When we start to search and go other ways due to AI, it's going to change drastically. So it's really really fascinating. And now we've got DeepSeek, which has come out just recently out of China, that has completely changed the game in terms of how quickly these models and how cheaply they can be developed. So one of the things that I hear from a lot of folks is they're like, oh, it's just too much going on. I feel so far behind. And what I tell them is, I feel behind every day, even though I'm up to date. So don't worry about it. You can jump in at any point and get up to speed very, very quickly because it changes literally every single day. But I don't think we're at a point where AI is going to be sentient and have some sort of level of consciousness. I think they're really good at fooling us in terms of that. I think they're the best writers and composers ever, but I don't think we have anything to fear as humans in thinking that these are going to be like live beings, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, cool. I agree with that side, and yeah, thanks for that detailed area. And yeah, it's interesting with the new platform from China, how that's changing things and changing even financial markets. That's just happened there, which is very interesting, as well as where it's going. And I think Google obviously being slightly behind the pack with Gemini now as it's been rebranded. I think that's very interesting on my side as well because like obviously Microsoft, as you know, is a big investor in ChatGPT, and then Google's got Gemini. You know, and they're different partnering Geminis with Android obviously there, and ChatGPT as well with Apple and stuff is coming into the phones. So it's quite interesting about how we're talking to them. It's going to learn a lot more about us, and just be able to do things. That automation side I think is really powerful. And a lot of people, I interviewed a guy a while ago, and now it's starting to come to fruition around like the email side. Imagine it could just understand how you think, draft a lot of emails, things like that. So you don't have to spend hours in it, daily. I think I'm looking forward to that part being really good and accurate. So we can just focus on what we want, right, in the business in there that we're enjoying, and the high value tasks, especially as the business owner or people that are growing the business in that side. So yeah, awesome, Jeff, mate. You've definitely shared a lot of value here today, and how we have to look at marketing, very differently in the new way forward to really grow our businesses. And I guess as we're starting to wrap up here today, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Uh, my key, my most important piece of advice is you got to take care of yourself. When you have this go attitude 24/7 and you're pushing really hard, you can sometimes easily lose focus on what matters. And most important is to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're no good to anyone. And what I would say about that is you have to sleep 8 hours a night. You can convince yourself that you need less, but it's going to hit you eventually, especially as you start to get older. You have to eat well. We all know that if we were to take water and put it in our gas tank, we would not be surprised if our car stopped running. And yet, most of us fill our bodies with garbage every day, and we don't understand why we don't feel well. So we need to give ourselves better fuel, and we need to give ourselves time to think. I think that there tends to be in the business community, especially just across Western culture, this addictiveness to being busy, and this feeling that we have to be busy. And I find that the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones who take time to just think and take in and maybe do a little bit of nothing. There's a lot of value in doing nothing, but it does feel like you're doing nothing, and that's kind of the point. It's important to take time to chill and relax a bit. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely in agreement on that side of refueling well, with resting, and and that thinking time also creates creative ideas, right? And things like that can come from that. Like whether it's in the shower, but just taking going for a walk. Being in a corner somewhere in a chair, whatever that time is, to allow your brain to switch and give you some other ideas, which could be a massive difference, instead of just running the wrong way in a race, right? You stop and go, okay, this is the way that I want to be running there. So love all those points, Jeff. So important. because yeah, without us, the business doesn't really work that well in whatever capacity that we're doing it. So awesome, mate. Love that. And yeah, we connected through our networks where I learned about your awesome journey from founding many companies, exiting, and now being the co-founder and CEO of Provalytics. You're an awesome guy, very knowledgeable, share a lot of awesome wisdom with us today, and I'm sure you will continue to enable marketers to grow their budgets. Very grateful, that we connected, and look forward to working with you further, Jeff. So, Jeff, how can people, find you and get in contact with you?
Best way is go to provalytics.com, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I love chatting with any entrepreneur, small or large. It's the journey is always exciting for me, either at the beginning or towards the end. It's a lot of fun to network with folks.
Yeah, awesome. Well, definitely check out Jeff there on the website, Provalytics, as well as him on LinkedIn there directly. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, mate, and thank you for being on the Business Grow Show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening to this show where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Ethan Cassiotis, or visit my website, ethancassiotis.com. If you want to grow and scale your business, you can reach out to me on any platform to see if we're a good fit. I completely agree with you, or do I? The only way you know is if you tune in next time. So until next time, remember that our business grows when we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So remember to design your growth and results.